So, chat, we are back yet again with more Armored Skeptic. He has seen the Green Man. He has witnessed. He has defended the Earth from the Red Menace. And now he demands to be seen, the Forgotten Man. This is, in his own words, essentially. I mean, I guess he's going to talk about it. I want to skip this like little intro. I guess we won't. I just don't like the music sting. Okay, here we go. He is revisiting his review of the Joker. I'm very excited. As a fan of both the Joker's work and Armored Skeptic's work, I'm very excited for this. It was a big crossover for me.
If you remember all that media hype surrounding the Joker film a few years back, recently I uploaded a re-edited version of the original review on my backup channel, Armored Gregory.
A re-edited version? What was re-edited?
Focusing on the social commentary around the film. And in the process of re-editing, I noticed that I didn't even actually review the film. But
oh, really? I believe that was a critique at the time.
Since The Joker 2 is coming out sometime soon, I don't know when, I thought now would be a good time to talk about how the Joker film has a lot to say about the condition of the North American man and his place in the modern world.
I love this for Greg. I love how cringe he is. This is great for us. Chat, gather around. It's cringemas.
If you appreciate the greater context of films in which the Joker fits, it borrows and expands on multiple themes from earlier works produced in the 1970s and 80s, which is probably the main reason the Joker has a retro setting. This film is a spiritual sequel to The King of Comedy, and I believe speaks to a lot of the same issues as Taxi Driver and even Deer Hunter a little bit. And I'm sure that it's not a coincidence that all of these films star Robert De Niro. I think that it's clear that director Todd Phillips intentionally placed De Niro in the role as talk show host to drive home the parallels he's drawing from those previous films.
Is his name talk show host in that movie?
Together, they all tell a fourth dimensional story.
I will say, though, this still fucking slaps as a look for the Joker. This is still a really good character design. The colors are nice. Man, it's good. I don't hate the Joker. I just think, like, boy, do we not have to, like, have this part of the reaction to it. It can be a movie unto itself. It can be edgy. You can like it. You can laugh at the certain parts. Like, it's an absurd movie. But, man, it's like Rick and Morty. Just some dudes just, like, get weird about these things, man.
About a similar man and the tragic process of disillusionment from society, disillusionment from iconic people and the iconic roles those people choose to play, as well as a man's difficult discovery and his attempt to come to terms with the fact that there is no place for him on this earth. He's merely tolerated for having a period of usefulness. Now, I'm sure that this message applies to a lot of women in the modern world, definitely more today than back in the 1970s. But
he should talk to women.
I'm not going to pretend that I'm an authority on the female condition. But before we get to that, I'd like to thank this video's sponsor, Raycon.
Let's go, Raycon.
I have like got ugly raid verbal. I only got to get out the string.
Greg coming out of the gate given I misinterpreted the meaning of Fight Club energy. Sad for him. Oh yeah. Joker guys are Rick and Morty guys are Fight Club guys. You know what I mean? You don't want to talk to them. Hey.
The film with the most obvious parallels to the Joker is King of Comedy. I think for people who struggled to relate with the Joker, all they could see is the way that it was aping off of King of Comedy's themes and gimmicks, like the way Joker lived out fantasies in his head, or the way he idolized a talk show host. But Joker is not a ripoff. There's a reason this film uses King of Comedy's premise to carry its message. It's a carry-over. Released in 1982, King of Comedy follows Rupert Pupkin, an aspiring comedian in New York City.
This guy looks like he has charisma, though.
Well, calling him an aspiring comedian is extremely
Or
generous,
is this dream sequence?
because in reality, he is a completely deluded man and has invented a fantasy in his own mind about being a famous comedian and also part of the inner circle of famous
I've seen this movie.
talk show host Jerry Lewis. Or Jerry Langfield, whatever. Pupkin is a pure fanatic, through and through. When we meet him, he jumps in Jerry's car at the end of his show, uninvited, and basically bullies Jerry into inviting him onto his talk show as a comedy act, insisting he is a very funny comedian. But after a couple of questions, Jerry realizes that Pupkin is not actually a working comedian. He has never done a set or proven that his comedy even works. Though the delusions that Joker and Pupkin both create in the beginning of their films are not really that
how quiet?
relatable.
So quiet?
They're supposed to represent the delusions that we ourselves create
I can turn him down for you if you think he's loud.
about reality as we're set forth in the beginning of our adulthood. There is a level of fantasy to it. We almost believe the Disney ideal, as it were. This is where we see for the first time Rupert Pumpkin do that Joker
Rupert Pumpkin?
gimmick where he recedes
That reminds me of that Tom Hanks Pumpkins character.
into his own mind. He loudly plays through fake conversations with Jerry, to the point where he's
He's just doing a whole ass review of this other movie now.
even annoying his mother upstairs.
More like a
And we see this
outline.
fantasy escalate throughout the film. First, Jerry is begging Pupkin to be on his show, a stark contrast to the conversation we just saw them have in the car. Jerry then begs him to be a regular on the show. This crazy train in Pupkin's head clearly has no brakes. We learn that this truly is a delusion to Pupkin, as it seems he cannot separate fantasy from reality. Though he's rejected over and over again, it becomes apparent that he truly believes that Jerry is going to love him and accept him. Ultimately, King of Comedy is about the public's shared delusion around entertainment in general. One of my favorite sequences in the film displays what this looks like from the perspective of the entertainer. Talk show host Jerry Lewis is walking down the streets of New York, and people start recognizing him. By the end of the walk, Jerry Lewis passes a woman on the phone, and initially she explodes with excitement to see him. But then she begins to beg Jerry to say hello to her son on the phone. But this makes Jerry uncomfortable, so he declines and continues to walk away from her. And when Jerry rejects her request, her demeanor immediately changes. The woman begins scoffing at Jerry, yelling at the top of her lungs that he's a terrible person, telling him to go to hell.
This is true. This is also my experience, although on the internet. People give you a little money and they think you're their little, like, dancing thing. You're their little play puppet. I was your Patreon patron. I can't believe you've done that. Eat a dick. I don't care. You can't buy me. There is no amount of money you could give me to make me have bad fucking opinions.
This is exactly
or do this kind of shit.
What it's like to be famous. People who recognize that you are
I can't be bought, Kippy.
a famous person will treat you like they have some kind of ownership over you. I believe an effect of the parasocial relationship phenomenon. When you become famous, most people hate you. She didn't want Jerry to say hello to her son because she loves her son and she loves Jerry. She was trying to use Jerry's fame to get mom points with her son. And when Jerry refused, her mask slipped. People will try to latch on to you the way Rupert Pumpkin tries to latch onto Jerry Lewis. Robert De Niro is the hypergratuitous manifestation of the shared delusion that we all experience when we buy into into this world that our television shows us. Pupkin and Joker are both the villains of their stories. They show the worst case scenario of the dark forces that exist in their societies. Both characters experiencing constant rejection from their environment. Just like Pupkin, Joker is on that side of the curtain. He's a loving member of the audience. But unlike Pupkin, Joker has no desire to be famous. In fact, his desire is much more pure. He just wants to make people laugh. Joker becomes,
I think it's Pupkin?
Disillusioned by...
He's certainly talking about this other movie a lot. I mean, I get it. You didn't have to spend this much time on drawing the parallels. I'm afraid you've given that example, and then you just keep giving the same example. Was he excited that he saw parallels in these two movies that were obvious? Okay. I don't know. I feel like we're just spending a lot of time on this. Carry on, man.
The talk show host
Divorce Dad Energy Greg gives a review so good he can't even consistently name the main character.
And by entertainment in general, because he skips right over being famous into infamy. Joker becomes famous for being hated. He becomes famous for being a buffoon. And you think about the way that this is true in our reality. Characters like Jake Lloyd, who played Anakin Skywalker in The Phantom Menace, had his life essentially ruined by bullying because he was famous for being hated. In Joker, it is the Joker who is betrayed, whereas
I don't think the Joker is a quality metaphor for Jake Lloyd's life.
in King of Comedy, it's showrunner Jerry
like
Lewis who is
some drug problems.
Disillusioned and betrayed by the entertainment industry, more or less. Real-life villains have been popping up out of the ranks of social media influencers as well.
Is this a villain? Is this Trisha Paytas? What was this, 5 months ago? Was she a villain 5 months ago? I don't know anything about it. I'm pretty sure that's her. Them?
It has the juice?
Jake and Hannah won't have you on TBR to read a chick track. Nope. Well, that makes them worse than Legion of Doom, and the Justice League needs to destroy them. I hope so. Thank you for the biddies.
Life. So this is a very relevant thing. Either fame chasers that'll stop at nothing to be seen, or maybe just an innocent party who's bullied for getting 5 minutes of fame. We also meet an acquaintance of Pupkin's, Marcia, played by Sandra Bernard. She comes off as very confrontational with him. They fight the entire time that they talk, but despite the fact that they cannot seem to stand each other, they also refuse to separate and go their own ways. Their relationship is clearly extremely toxic and serves to communicate to the audience what kind of environment Rupert exists within. Together, these two characters cook up a desperate scheme to get Rupert into Jerry's show. Their plan? To kidnap Jerry and hold him hostage for ransom, and that ransom being a special spot on Jerry's show as a featured comedian.
It's a solid plan.
The network gives in to Pupkin's demands and air a special recording of Rupert's comedy routine. We get to see De Niro monologue Pupkin's entire routine in a single shot, just like a real comedy routine. But it's extremely unfunny. In fact, almost everything that Rupert says here is really sad. He has no self-awareness about it, but he more or less tells his entire life story in a 5-minute sequence explaining that his father hated him and that his mother was an alcoholic who neglected him. The parallel with the Joker, of course, is that they're both lost boys.
This is pretty easy stuff. We get it. Does he stop talking about this at any point? This didn't get any views, right? 58K? That's not...
Representing a family dynamic that's all too common in our reality. Ultimately, what we learn in the end here is that Rupert Pumpkin was not rabidly chasing fame for the sake of being famous. He was trying to alleviate his insecurities and fill a giant void in his life. He didn't want to be well known so much as he wished to be loved. He didn't just want to be seen as funny, he wanted to have some sort of value in society. He needed to be heard. In his comedy routine, he fully trauma dumps his past on the audience because he needed people to know what he's been through and why he suffers. The Joker, though, spells it out a little bit more in the final scene, though. His big performance and emotional outburst came at the end of a monologue explaining this very issue. That there are people in our society that are...
You know, I lost my desire to edit these. I don't feel like these are like, look at this. Like, you have 463,000 subscribers and 58K views. Like, I don't think like YouTube is a viable like place to work. I don't know. It just the way they push it sucks, man. And it has for a long time. It seems like he puts time into these. Man, I feel like he has not very much skill for this. And I've never really, I guess I don't really get it. I don't really get it, man. Good for him, I suppose.
Are not being heard. And worst case scenario, many of them are going to become dangerous because of this. Yeah, we essentially learned with the Joker that he was brought up to believe that his life would only have value if he was a servant, if he was a giver of joy, a clown. The first time the Joker recedes into his mind, into a delusion, I think best exemplifies this point. He imagines himself as an audience member on the talk show, and we don't only learn that he idolizes the host as a spiritual father, but the validation that he seeks in the fantasy is for how much he loves his mother. When he says, "I love my mother very much," the host and the entire audience respond very positively to this. With later interactions in the film between Joker and his mother, we see that she treats him as if he is an accessory to her life, and that he exists to serve her. He reveals in his own fantasy that he believes that his greatest value as a human is his love for his mother. Being a clown is a curse. This is something that is hinted at in the Truman Show as well. His mother even points to a photo of Truman as a child that is labeled "My Little Clown."
Wow. Cool. We're not really talking about anything here, Greg. It took you 13 minutes to say something that took about 30 seconds to really get through. Yeah, there's a lot of parallels in this. This you can see here and here and here. So let's talk about the movie we're here for. Maybe he's mad. Maybe he's like, it's not about that, but I thought it was. Maybe I'm wrong.
These are characters who never received love in their entire life. This represents the false paradigms taught to children who have abusive parents. And the false reality of the Truman Show represents the false reality built around us by society. Some of Truman's acts might be seen as villainous if it were to turn out that his reality was actually real. Yes, by the end, Rupert Pupkin is a bad man who did a bad thing. Misguided, dangerous, delusional. Yeah, sure, but like the Joker, he just wanted to be a source of happiness in this chaotic world, and he didn't know a meaningful way to achieve that. He had no guidance. He felt that he had one big chance to prove who he was. He pulled a Joker move and hijacked a talk show just to feel seen for one night. He needed validation. He needed to know that he was seen. And he essentially gets that. At the end of the film, Pupkin gets to show his love interest that he is in fact on the television doing his comedy routine. And when he sees in her eyes that she's impressed, he's validated. It doesn't matter that it's not real, because it's real to him. And that's...
I can't help but detect a layer of this where Greg self-identifies, and it's kind of just sad, man.
It's all that mattered in the end. The film with the most poignant parallel to Joker, however, is Taxi Driver. Again, another Martin Scorsese film starring Robert De Niro. Released in 1976, Taxi Driver follows Travis Bickle, a man who just came home from serving in the military.
He's a big... All right. let's go through it. I'm glad I didn't see this when the movie came out.
Travis is able-bodied, sharp-minded, passionate. Travis gets a job driving taxi at night, hot-seating someone else's cab. During the interview, we get the impression that he doesn't even really need the job. He's more just looking for something to do. It seems like purpose and passion are Travis's main motivations in the film. He wants so badly to do something meaningful, it becomes destructive. He is clearly lost and has no idea what to do to achieve this, which causes him to slowly descend into madness throughout the story. And rejection becomes a motivator too, as constant rejection from his love interest leads him to try to take away things from her that she loves. At first we see an act of inexcusable evil. He's so frustrated at his interactions with a woman that he decides to make an attempt on the life at her boss, a politician, eventually becoming a vigilante, saving a woman's life at the sacrifice of his own. This serves to be a very Joker thing to do, if you will, and also sort of highlights that
That's a reductive way to go about that movie.
scary parallel to reality that I
right
brought up in
through
my
it.
earlier reviews. It's beautiful and tragic at the end of the story as we watch him slowly die, because as chaotic and unfocused as he became by this point in the film, he managed to perform one good great deed, one meaningful act that made him feel purpose. And just like Pupkin and just like the Joker, we see in his eyes that he's satisfied with this. At one point in the story, Bickle has a politician in his cab, and he starts to rant about some of the issues that he sees while driving around New York City. The struggles he witnesses, the filth that he wades through in his daily life. But like the everyman, Travis lacks the ability to properly articulate his ideas to the politician. He knows that he sees problems in the world. He knows that society is sick and broken.
Yeah, society is sick and broken.
But he doesn't really know how to properly explain these issues.
I do. Capitalism.
He almost kind of comes off as ignorant, but we know that he isn't wrong about what he's saying. We know how fucking terrible New York was in the 70s and 80s, how sick our society is. So we all relate when he says, I just wish someone would come and clean this all up. He's right. We are taxi drivers too. We are the ones that live in this shit. We deal with the reality that politicians create for us. But the guy in the back seat of his cab doesn't really know what reality is like. He's detached. He doesn't experience real life like the rest of us. It kind of almost doesn't even matter if Travis managed to properly articulate himself anyways, because there's a major disconnect between us and them, and that's what this scene is highlighting. In the end, a politician only really cares if we like them or not.
It's crazy to me that he is identifying with this character so hard. I'm not surprised. Not one bit. Does he need help? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We're in a society. We're big into one. What is that one movie? I can't think of it. Oh yeah. What's the character in Fight Club? What's he called? What's the guy's name? Oh, why can't I think of it right now? It's on the tip of my tongue. Someone say it in chat really quick. I'm going to remember it before you do. Tyler Durden. Fuck, you remembered it. Iron Gullet got it. Iron Gullet got it. It's Tyler Durden. Very Tyler Durden guy, I'm sure.
Politician is still going to go back to work
Robert Paulson, that's
next day and make the world a worse place for everyone. New York was still going to be a cesspool, whether that conversation happened or not. There was never going to be a place in society for Travis Bickle. There's nothing he can do about that. De Niro chooses to rebel, but he only really had one other choice, and that was best exemplified in a scene where De Niro talks to another cabbie called Wizard. Wizard tries to impart some wisdom onto Bickle, explaining how reality really works. Wizard says that life is about accepting that you have no place here, that there is no meaning in making investment into life. Being on the night shift, for example, neither one of those drivers own their own cab. They're just ghosts. They're not real people.
Real people. Lampetia! Thanks for going to Aries. Corinthiae! Thank you.
Nothing in life really matters, so just do the least amount of work possible. Be forgettable. Be a ghost. Bickle, being young and driven to derive meaning from life, rejects Wizard's paradigm. He essentially realizes that Wizard is right, that reality presents a brick wall. He has other options too, obviously, like marriage, the white picket fence, but what does he do if he can't find that? Because most men can't. And I think one of the points that
What, Greggy? Hey, Greggy, look, are we getting a little bit into some rhetoric here? Are we getting a little bit into a little bit of... Are we involuntarily celibate territory here? Most men can't get the white picket fence. I mean, financially, sometimes that's the case. If you want a quality, like, partnership with you, another person, you just got to have good quality communication, man. You don't have to be perfect. That's it.
Scorsese is making in this film is that Bickle's likelihood of finding love has been diminished because of his life experience. There is nowhere for him to go, and all the potential for him to become dangerous escalates as his passionate desire to live meaningfully is going to keep slamming him harder and harder against that wall. Something eventually has to break, and in the case of Taxi Driver, it's his mind that breaks. Deer Hunter is almost like a prequel to Taxi Driver, as it shows an earlier stage of the same...
Dude. We need to do some kind of... like media analysis boot camp.
Man's Life. Released in 1978, Robert De Niro plays Michael, a factory worker in a small industrial town in the middle of nowhere. He and his friends are young and energetic. They feel trapped in their small menial lives, and they passionately want to get out into the world and do something meaningful, something thrilling.
All of these are critiques on capitalism without understanding that that's the root cause, because they've been so fucking brainwashed to think communism is bad. And then they're like, every single time... It's wild stuff. Oh, we need to go back into the country. Oh, we need a simpler life. We need this and that.
While deer hunting, we learn how strict and seriously Michael takes life, refusing to share his equipment with his negligent friend. He runs off on his own to chase down a buck.
No, he didn't say he was going to get violent. He said you can't blame a guy for getting a little violent if he hasn't had a mate for a while.
This is a man who is driven and determined. At one point during a party, the gang notices a Marine in uniform, a man who just returned home from the Vietnam War. They note how stoic and cool he seems. De Niro and his friends clearly look up to the Marine as they follow him to the bar and ask him questions about
there's your flaw right there, dude.
What it's like to be a soldier in the trenches. In Deer Hunter, his disillusionment comes much earlier. During his time in the military, he comes back to his friends who love him, but as a changed man. The psychological stress that they endured in a prisoner of war camp completely broke them, especially his friend Nick, played by Christopher Walken. Their experience was extreme, a story that you would never want to share with anyone when you got home. The world would never understand. We essentially learn what it was that made that Marine at the beginning of the film so stoic and detached. It's not because he's a cool badass who killed Viet Cong. He has seen some shit. He's lost his connection to humanity. Even though it seems like De Niro can find a way to live with it, his friend Nick cannot.
Did Should we invest in some mental health care?
Causing him to take his own life. A sad parallel to reality. And even though one form of trauma is very overt, going to war, and the other type of trauma is a little bit more subtle, abused by his parents, when he tries to become a man living in society, he will be a lost boy. And that brings me to The Park Is Mine,
Talk about clowns and being
released
sad.
as a made-for-TV
boy.
movie in 1986 starring Tommy Lee Jones. The premise fits the same themes as all the earlier films, only it takes that message and makes it a lot more blunt. Tommy Lee Jones plays a Vietnam veteran in New York City who just lost his best friend to suicide. At the end of the film, the main character literally
Dude, Tommy Lee Jones has looked old forever.
explains everything that I just
All movies,
explained in
dude.
this video to the entire city of New York over the radio. His message is so pointed and relatable that the very police that he had spent the last 3 days battling in a constant siege agree with Tommy Lee Jones, demonstrating that this is universal.
He handed them a verbal Pepsi. That happens. Sometimes you own the police, and they use their reason, and they don't use emotion, and you appeal to their better senses, and they stop hunting you like a dog.
Most men suffer
right.
from this frustration in society. Like I said years ago, even if you participate in the system and you are a part of the system, you can still be a victim of the system.
Everyone is a victim of capitalism, my dude. Even the wealthy.
Why this is important for Joker is because order versus chaos is one of the main themes in the film. Joker chooses chaos over order because the order forgets him. It leaves him to die in the ditch. And essentially that's what the police cult is the cult of order. And that's one of the issues that I meant to talk about a couple of years back. I did say that the media holds responsibility for their role in society. Their narratives affect us. It affects the way that we perceive our reality, therefore affects the way that we react to stimuli in reality. In the film, the media starts a class war by choosing to frame Joker's first murder as a pointed attack against successful businessmen.
The media starts a class war.
Against the upper class, fueled by jealousy and anger for feeling inferior to their wealthy status. One of the effects of this type of reporting incenses the lower class to rise up and participate in this alleged trend. That's the part I mentioned. But more than that, and result that comes from reporting this way, the way that the upper class reacts. This type of reporting sets the population against itself. Essentially, with this type of reporting in the Joker film, the media was trying to scare the middle class and upper middle class families at home. This also makes it 1,000 times less likely that if you're middle class, you're going to want to help one of these people. There are so many people who can see that there is something wrong with our sick society. It's not a sign of health to be healthy in a sick society. We are functioning in a broken paradigm. And these fringe group people, they lack the ability to articulate and pinpoint what exactly it is that's wrong.
I can tell you what's wrong. It rhymes with fapitalism.
This is how cults get started. People glob on to whoever comes along saying that they have the answers to all of life's most difficult questions.
All of life's difficult questions? No, my cult specifically answers one question correctly. What's the meaning of life? Wait a second.
There are
Yes, fapitalism. It rhymes with fapitalism.
a lot of lost boys out there. People who have passion and drive to change the world and be something important. People who want
Your new rant Sona sucks. I hate this. This sucks.
to make a difference and have purpose in the world.
Like, the art's fine, but it's
they
like,
don't
it
know
sucks.
how to get out of the maze. They're running in circles.
I like your other stuff better. Like, this is genuinely better. It might be more scuffed, but I like it more. It has more character. All right, Dave is a lost boy. Dave is having one. He's having problems. a lot of the disillusionment that young people face, including young men face, revolves around capitalism. And they probably don't even know it. And then the other stuff is just like, don't be racist, misogynist, etc. Stuff that they would say is the woke mind virus. But it's like, I don't feel like I'm not online. I mean, I know I do this, but like, would you guys consider me a very locked into the current drama? I don't think so. I'm not interested in your little I don't know, corners of the internet. You sit something in front of me, and I'll tell you how I feel about it. And like, man, I don't think there's like a really hardcore like criteria you have to be a leftist. You just gotta actually believe the things that we believe, right? So what is the thing that you believe? Well, I think that capitalism requires of people to abandon their ethics if they are to succeed very well in capitalism, right? Like, you can't maximize your capital, which is the goal of capitalism, is to line go up. You can't maximize that while also being an ethical actor, right? And so it seems to encourage, like cronyism and criminalism and all sorts of shit. So the drama corner. I've had blue hair before. Yeah. I just don't understand how capitalists like live their life that way. Anyway, I guess to circle around back to Greg, there seems to be a crossover here between like this. I think he's like a libertarian capitalist guy, but he doesn't really know how to reconcile all of that. I could be wrong, but he certainly doesn't he doesn't trust the banks, but he definitely thinks that like gold has value. Being a leftist has a low bar. Think water is a human right, or like no human should suffer. Seems like leftist thing to believe in. Like, I think no human should suffer, although I understand that all humans will suffer throughout their lives at some point. I guess my whole thing has always been like, I just survival shouldn't be commodified. That's it. We should be able to live free. Wow. Now that's a fucking political tagline. Live free. Because it means a lot of different things. I mean freely with your like life. Like, I want you to be the person you are and everything. But I also don't want I don't want cost of living to be a thing. Eliminate cost of living. Cost of like being alive and safe and secure and stuff, it should not be a thing. We should eliminate that altogether. No, not UBI. Not UBI. We have to think much bigger than more capitalism. What if we just simply had more money? No, UBI is silly. UBI only works, again, in a situation where you divorce survival from capital. Anyway, we can talk about a whole bunch of stuff. Funny how that comes up even in the English bubble. I don't know what that means. Are we in English bubble? I don't like UBI. You would have to abandon like the concept of rent altogether. Like, if I give you $2,000 a month, like I'm president, and I'm like $2,000 a month for all citizens. Okay, everyone has $2,000 a month. What do you think landlords are doing? It's overnight. What do you think everybody else is doing overnight? Raising their prices a little bit. You know what I mean? They're trying to get a little bit of that. And slurp it up. But, no. Yeah, Ellie's not on there. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Ellie is nowhere to be seen. I think you mistook the back seat